A small boy from Gary, Indiana stepped onto the world stage at 5, his voice soaring, feet gliding effortlessly across the stage. Michael Jackson was a global phenomenon before he even grasped the concept of fame. On the surface, there were glittering performances, adoring crowds, and countless accolades. Beneath the polished exterior lurked immense pressure, loneliness, and a childhood lost to relentless rehearsals and the cold glare of the spotlight. Michael's life unfolded publicly, each stage of his growth captured by flashing cameras and echoing applause. Fame was his birthright and his burden. Though surrounded by millions, he often described a haunting isolation, a yearning for something real amid the noise. Beyond moonwalks and record-breaking albums, Michael carried a simple wish deep within: to create a sanctuary of family and love, away from the public's hungry gaze. He tried to build that world within Neverland Ranch, a place of whimsy, of music and laughter, of carousels and animals and eternal boyhood. Yet even in Neverland, the cameras found him. The lawsuits followed, the whispers grew louder. Michael retreated further, deeper into seclusion, his children becoming his only constant. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Michael's deepest dream became reality with the births of Prince Michael, Paris, and Prince Michael II, known affectionately as Blanket. But the life he built for them was cautious, secretive, and fiercely protective. He shielded their faces with masks and kept them hidden behind hotel curtains, determined that they never experience the overwhelming spotlight he knew all too well. He read them fairy tales, sang lullabies, filled their rooms with magic and music. In those private moments, he tried to reclaim the childhood he never had, through theirs. It wasn't just a second chance. It was redemption through their laughter, their innocence, their unfiltered love. He would often film their playtime, not for publicity, but as keepsakes. There were afternoons spent painting together, evenings watching cartoons cuddled up on a couch, and long walks through the garden whispering questions about the moon. In Michael's world, magic wasn't an illusion. It was the effort to protect his children from the harshness he had known. He was meticulous about their routines. Meals were moments of connection, free from phones or outside noise. Bedtime stories were rituals, complete with voices and laughter. He taught them not only how to sing, but how to feel music, how rhythm was not just sound, but emotion given form. There were impromptu dance parties in the living room, quiet piano sessions before bedtime, a puppet show Michael created just for them, where every voice was his. He became not the entertainer, but the father, soft, silly, intentional. Yet, there was always a curtain, and behind it, the world waited. The media speculated, fans camped outside gates, journalists pounced on blurry photos. He never stopped shielding them. He never stopped believing that love could be enough. But on June 25, 2009, everything changed. Michael Jackson, arguably the most famous man in the world, was found unresponsive in his bedroom. The headlines screamed. The world mourned, and 3 children lost the only safe place they'd ever known. Prince Jackson, the quiet builder. Prince Michael Jackson Jr., born on February 13, 1997, was cradled not just in his father's arms, but in his father's legacy. From the very beginning, Prince carried a name that conjured up magic, controversy, and stardom in equal measure. But behind the public intrigue was just a boy raised in rarefied air, gentle, observant, and surrounded by love, carefully curated by a father who'd once been devoured by fame. Michael called him "my little philosopher." Even as a toddler, Prince asked big questions about the sky, about animals, about why people hurt. He wasn't raised on scripts, but on bedtime stories and nature documentaries. His playdates were with his siblings and security guards. His classroom sometimes moved from room to room following his father's schedule. But it was always filled with questions and creativity. Prince helped care for animals in Neverland's private zoo. He held baby chimpanzees, played tag between fountains, and watched Peter Pan under moonlit skies. His father's eccentricities were not oddities to him. They were rhythms of a magical, insular childhood. He saw the pain behind the glitter, the weariness after concerts, the toll of being dissected by the public. He once told a childhood friend, I don't think people realize how hard my dad works to make it all look easy. Michael instilled in Prince a sense of responsibility early on, not toward fame, but toward empathy. He would take his children on anonymous charitable visits, children's hospitals, foster homes, soup kitchens. They saw their father not in sequins but in silence, handing out toys, listening to stories, making eye contact with those the world ignored. When Michael passed away, Prince was just 12. His public eulogy, delivered with trembling composure, marked the beginning of a new chapter. The estate battles began. The silence of Neverland was replaced by the noise of lawyers, guardianship debates, and a nation's grief, projected onto 3 grieving children. Prince adapted by retreating inward. He read voraciously. He filled notebooks with sketches and short stories. He recorded audio diaries and storyboarded imaginary films. Art became sanctuary. At Loyola Marymount, he immersed himself in digital production and business ethics, seeking not to replicate his father's career, but to understand how stories could change the world. He launched King Sun Productions quietly. The goal wasn't to spotlight celebrities, it was to amplify the voices of those who weren't being heard. A former classmate remembered his senior thesis, a documentary following the lives of 3 high schoolers from broken families, each using art to survive. Prince called it Mirrors, and he dedicated it to his father. Simultaneously, Prince led Heal LA, a youth-centered nonprofit aimed at addressing poverty, education gaps, and homelessness in Los Angeles. He didn't outsource the work. He packed lunches himself, organized community days, visited classrooms. He once told a student, "This isn't about me. It's about what we can build together." Despite the spotlight hovering just inches away, Prince remains largely private. His Instagram offers glimpses, family photos, community events, occasional humor, but no extravagance. He often avoids interviews, but when he does speak, it's with thoughtfulness beyond his years. He has acknowledged the pressure of his last name. In one rare sit-down, he said, "Being his son doesn't mean I have to follow his path. It means I have to understand what he stood for, and decide how I'll stand for something too." Today, he continues to make short films, consults on youth programs, and mentors first-generation college students. He's found love, stability, and purpose far from the noise. He speaks of balance often, of boundaries, of healing, not just for himself, but for the world he hopes to shape. Prince is not a performer. He is not a spectacle. He is not a second Michael. He is a quiet builder, a legacy redefined one frame at a time. Paris Jackson, the wild bloom. Paris Michael Catherine Jackson was born on April 3, 1998, and from the beginning she was wrapped in contradictions, privilege and restriction, protection and exposure, magic and mourning. She was Michael's only daughter, his princess, and he enveloped her in love like a protective spell. But the world she was born into wasn't a fairy tale. It was a world watching, waiting, judging. Her early childhood was ethereal. Home was Neverland, giraffes in the backyard, lullabies sung by the greatest entertainer on earth, birthday parties that looked like fantasy films. But even then, Paris wasn't the golden child. She was sensitive, prone to questioning. Her father nurtured that spark. He taught her to paint, to listen to classical music, to speak through art when words weren't enough. Michael told her stories about courage and kindness. He showed her documentaries on nature, war, hunger. Feel everything, he told her, even the hard things. And she did. When Michael died, Paris was just 11. She broke down publicly at the memorial, her voice cracking through sobs. "Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine." In the years that followed, Paris spiraled. She was thrust into a world she didn't choose. Paparazzi, custody changes, online speculation. The safe walls of Neverland were gone. Grief settled in her bones and adolescence became a battlefield. By 14, she was self-harming. At 15, she attempted suicide. She was admitted to a residential therapy program. In later interviews, she described that time as a slow drowning, a feeling of screaming into water while the world watched but couldn't or wouldn't hear. But Paris survived, and she began to rebuild. Not with the polish of Hollywood, but with the rawness of someone who had touched rock bottom and chosen to rise. She embraced music, forming the indie folk band The Soundflowers. Their songs, quiet and aching, felt like journal entries set to guitar. She became a model, but not one molded by expectation. Tattoos covered her arms. She posed barefoot, unretouched, vulnerable. She spoke openly about mental health, trauma, identity. She rejected the pressure to perform. She reclaimed her body, her voice, her image. Paris came out as queer, describing her sexuality as fluid, expansive. She spoke about loving souls, not genders. She began dating artists, poets, rebels. Her life became a canvas, messy, expressive, unfiltered. She acted in small films, collaborated with other musicians, and created a visual identity all her own. And through it all, she kept referencing Michael, not as an icon, but as a father. "Everything good in me came from him," she once said. "The music, the compassion, the need to make something out of pain." Today, Paris lives in a quiet corner of Los Angeles, surrounded by animals and canvases. She's building a creative collective, mentoring young queer artists, volunteering at mental health nonprofits. She's not chasing billboard charts. She's building safe spaces for herself and for others who've been through fire. She calls herself a wild bloom, something delicate that survived the frost. She isn't trying to prove she's Michael's daughter. She's trying to prove she's alive, and that survival itself can be a kind of artistry. Bigi Jackson, the still observer. Prince Michael Jackson II was born on February 21, 2002. The world called him Blanket, a name intended as a symbol of love, but one that became a symbol of ridicule. He was the baby dangled over a hotel balcony, the last mystery of Michael's public life, and for years a ghost of the spotlight. Michael once said Blanket had the purest soul of all of them. After Michael's death, Bigi, his chosen name as he matured, became the most silent. Paris mourned loudly. Prince matured visibly. But Bigi went inward. He moved in with his grandmother, Catherine, and largely vanished from public life. In school, he was brilliant, but reserved. He loved numbers, puzzles, documentaries. While his siblings pursued art and outreach, Bigi studied energy policy and environmental science. He never gave interviews. He didn't post on social media. But quietly, he started designing things: off-grid homes, sustainable energy systems, low-impact tech. At 18, he appeared briefly in a YouTube interview. Calm, collected, thoughtful. He spoke about climate change, conservation, systems thinking, not with slogans, but with strategies. "I think we have a responsibility," he said, "to do more than inherit. We have to build." But Bigi's childhood wasn't entirely solitary. Behind the silence was a quiet tenderness shared with his father, a bond built not through words, but through ritual. Michael would wake him each morning with soft music playing. They would eat cereal together, then watch old cartoons from the 1950s. Michael would sometimes do the voices. Blanket, then just a small boy, would giggle uncontrollably, his laughter echoing through the marble halls of Neverland. He was the most physically affectionate of the three siblings, curling beside Michael during long car rides, hugging tightly during bedtime stories. He rarely asked questions. He simply observed. It was said he could watch a butterfly for 10 minutes and then draw it perfectly. After Michael's death, Bigi struggled not just with grief, but with fear of being seen, of being misunderstood. His public image had been mocked since infancy. He developed anxiety. He stopped speaking in groups. At school, he was the kid who always had a hoodie up, who never raised his hand, who turned in perfect homework but never smiled. Therapists worked with him slowly. Art became his bridge back. He drew obsessively, sketchbooks filled with imagined cities powered by wind and sunlight. At 14, he wrote an essay about ocean pollution that won a statewide science prize. It was read aloud by a teacher. He stayed seated, head down, the whole time. He enrolled in university under a pseudonym, refusing special treatment. He interned at an environmental nonprofit. He started a grant fund for clean water initiatives. No press releases, no photos. Just quiet work. He still lives privately. Few know what he looks like now. He rarely speaks in public. But his name occasionally appears on foundation filings, tech startup boards, and research collaborations. He is building not a brand, but a blueprint. His siblings say he's the funniest of them all. Paris calls him our quiet genius. Prince says, if BG wanted to run the world, he probably could, but he'd never tell you. He still visits family, still loves old cartoons, still cooks with Paris on weekends, still watches home movies of his dad. He still collects vintage comics, plays chess online, and volunteers under aliases. BG never chased attention. He doesn't need applause. He doesn't want followers. What he wants is sustainability, quiet, integrity. He's not rejecting his legacy. He's anchoring it, deep in the soil where roots can grow wide and quiet. And sometimes that is the most lasting legacy of all. Michael Jackson's children inherited a name heavy with myth, but they've chosen their own truths. Prince builds structures of hope. Paris turns pain into poetry. BG shapes the future from the shadows. They are not repeats, not shadows, not footnotes. They are full stories. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt the weight of legacy or the ache of starting over, subscribe and share. Which of their journeys spoke to you most? For more untold stories behind iconic names, stay tuned for the next episode of Whatever Happened to Their Kids?